my very first book. My first book was called Wizard's Kingdom, and I can remember that I used to write short stories and I needed them proofread and edited, so I took them to the only person I knew at the time, which was the head of English in my local primary school. My two sons, Christopher and Ryan, went to that school. I also went to the school before they knocked it down, built a new one. She read all my short stories and she said she called us in for a parent-teacher meeting one day, which was always scary, and said to us, my youngest son Ryan was falling behind in his English at the time. His grades were dropping, and she said that he was watching too many videos and things and playing video games, and he was playing football and rugby and he wasn't reading enough. So she said, why don't you write him a book? And that's exactly where it started for me. So the inspiration for my first book really was my children.
So Folked Up was inspired by my love of folk music, which I discovered at a relatively early stage listening to Radio 2. I heard a Steel Ice band song when I was about 16 or so on the radio, and actually I thought, here was this traditional folk music which I'd always been interested in but had never really sort of fully explored. And it was a rock song as well. Obviously me being a big metalhead, I thought, hey, this is quite interesting. And being the feminist with having this really strong female vocal was like, yeah, I could get into this. And then obviously one thing led to another. You sort of discover different bands, different music, and I sort of fell in love with the storytelling aspect of folk music. Folked Up was really just me thinking about certain folk songs that I particularly liked and wondering what would happen if I brought some of the characters together, because they're such complete stories in themselves. But how could you turn it into something new and something exciting and also relevant for younger readers, because there's so much in the English folk song canon that people just aren't exposed to at a certain age. But really it's quite exciting, and I wish I'd have discovered it sooner.
The inspiration for my book, AFA, came when I was a child. I'd had a vague idea of wanting to create 4 kingdoms based on the elements. At the time I was completely obsessed with fairies, had ornaments everywhere. So I decided to look into developing. When I was in university, I came across this art book. It's probably aimed at children, but I was fascinated by it. This is the artist who wrote this art book, Linda Ravencroft, and I was trying my hand at drawing, and I one day thought, what would it be like to wake up and discover you're a fairy? Then I remembered my childhood idea of these 4 kingdoms based on the elements, so I put the 2 ideas together and wrote my book.
Well, actually, it didn't really start off as a novel. It started more off as a short story. For those that have read the book, it was a particular chapter about bananas and a very irate character, which was the starting point for the novel, really. I wrote it as part of a short story. It was a local sort of group involvement thing where you were given a topic and you were supposed to form a short story of 2,000 words, I think. And you were given a topic, and I had fresh fruit, and it was supposed to be about farmers and wholesomeness, and it ended up about a rant about DNA and cannibalism, as you do. I remember writing that particular chapter and then not submitting it, thinking actually this character was more. There was something special about this character and about what I was starting with, and I didn't want to put him in this bubble of 2,000 words and keep him there. There was much more to be explored, much more to be enjoyed in having writing this person, and that's where it started, and it kind of just evolved. Once I had that one character in my head, he didn't kind of go away. I remember quite vividly walking around my woods, doing my dog walk. The woods in the actual novel is a very real place. It's where I spend a lot of time with the dog, doing dog walks and things like that. Being there and remembering it being school holidays and kids running past and chasing squirrels, my dog running off chasing animals, and that being kind of the footprint for that kind of part of the novel. And then once I'd got those 2 characters, and once I kind of had Cosmo in there and I had Harley, it was very hard to ignore where these 2 people belong together. And that's where I really started thinking about, well, who else would be there? What else would be in this situation? What kind of story do these characters want to tell? And from there it was quite easy almost to put the pieces together and make something that was really fun to write, really enjoyable to put down on paper and to kind of have a good time with them. And that's how it started.
At the time of writing The Heroes of Wonderful, I had 2 nieces. Now I have 3 nieces and a nephew. I wanted to write something for my 2 nieces, just a small story, just out of nowhere. I love Christmas. It's my favourite time of year, so I set it in around Christmas. But the more I got writing as a standalone story, I thought, well, maybe I could make a little bit more out of this. Maybe I could make this into a series. So whenever I had finished the first draft, I went back and I wrote more and turned it from a standalone story of Wonderful into the Seas and Islands, and it's grown from there.
My first book was Tridea's Children. I don't really know where the idea for this came from. It came to me when I was out on a bike ride down the Kentish coast. I used to cycle every day during the summer with my brothers. Took us down from like Margate and to Herne Bay every couple of hours. It was great fun, but we would often discuss random things like nanobots, spaceships, and different worlds. This was originally where the idea of Tridea's Children came to my mind, and it's where I began working on it. Originally it was planned as a film script, and it was later ditched as a film script and became the novel of Tridea's Children. I would spend several weeks building up the ideas, looking at different parts of the world, for building up the lore behind each of the different species. The Elcons, I've looked further into cats and how they developed, how they lived, all these little bits that went into the book, and it helped build up the book.
Well, it was a trilogy. It was a trilogy, so kind of the same thing. It was the Wizard's Kingdom trilogy, 3 books in a row. So that was that. Other inspirations behind other stories later on, because I got quite a few books behind me anyway.
My second novel published is Lost Words. This came from the idea I've been playing around came from inspiration of Inkheart by Cornelia Funk and that whole entire series for Ink Spell and Ink Death. The books itself really gave me a great feeling that the characters were alive. So I played with this idea. I went into creating a world where the characters originally had lives and where they had lives after their story was told. So in Lost Worlds, or Lost Words, people are pulled from their own world. So like say me or yourself was pulled from Earth into a story, and we had to live out the story that the author had written. We'd live that life out, and then once that was finished and we'd lived it out over and over and over again, we'd be dumped into this world where all these characters from other books have also suffered through an author's creation, and they would have to live there, and they're stuck in this place, ripped away from their family and friends, everyone they know for hundreds of years. Sometimes they would die there. It's not really something they can get away from, but that's what Lost Words was. It's where everyone came together from different worlds, and you never knew what it was going to be. And writing that was very difficult. I had to look at loads of different books. I studied Peake, Alice in Wonderland, anything. I had to look at Les Miserables, Winnie the Pooh, and then that's scratched out because it's the public domain yet. But there's lots of different things that had to be worked into it, looked into, create the world of Lost Words.